Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're still in the TV movie Spielberg phase. And back on the show is my pal Rowan, who is the real MVP, who might be talking to him about something else after we wrap up today.
I would be
Rowan,
honored, and you know this.
yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, anytime.
And today we're going to be talking about Something Evil, which is one of Spielberg's early TV movies. But I have a sinking feeling we might chat a little bit more about what our coming attraction is for this Friday. And because it's a pretty big deal. And then we have some recommendations for you at the end. But let's get to the cut to the chase and get into our coming attraction, because is there anything else of note coming out this weekend besides Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness?
Right. They are trying, like everyone else is trying their hardest to give this a wide berth. I know, like, the next really big movie, I guess, isn't until Downton Abbey and then Top Gun a week later, and that's at the end of this month.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because next week's Firestarter, and it's also releasing on Peacock anyway,
Exactly.
Which is
which is why I did not loop it in with the big movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know Happenings coming up this weekend, a new, I think, IFC film.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not showing literally anywhere in New Jersey. I checked.
Yeah, I know. Petite Maman is getting a U.S. release, which I'm seeing it next Wednesday, which I'm very excited about.
Seeing it tomorrow.
Nice, very nice, very nice.
All 1 hour and 13 minutes of it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm seeing it for free, so I don't really mind the runtime either way. But
there you go. I will be. Now I'm flexing a bit. I will be seeing Men on Tuesday.
Oh, very nice. I love it. I love it. If I still was living in New York City next week, maybe I would be able to, but I will be back on Cape Cod come Wednesday, come Sunday, actually, 2 days.
There you go. Yeah, I'll be heading into Philly to go check that out on Tuesday. But we're here to talk about In the Multiverse of Madness, which one of us has seen it already as we record, and one of us has not. And one of us has tried their best to avoid spoilers, but people are assholes and post things on YouTube.
It's true. And I did a near perfect poker face while Shane was explaining the spoilers that he may or may not have seen.
Yes,
none of which I will confirm are true or false.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I wasn't even looking at Rowan's face when I was talking about them because I didn't even want to see.
You don't trust me that much, yeah.
And you know what? I forgot one too. But honestly, they give it away in the trailer, honestly. I feel like it was like what everybody else thought was Tom Cruise in the trailer, and then became very obvious that it was like a black person. It's like, that's definitely not Tom Cruise.
I called it that it wasn't Tom Cruise the second it appeared on screen. They were going purely based on what they were wearing and not like anything else about them. The face, yeah.
I don't think that's Tom Cruise.
Exactly.
Just going out with there.
Tom Cruise is not like there are cameos in the movie that they have shown in the trailers, but the best ones they have not shown in the trailers. And Tom Cruise is one that you would not want to show in the trailers.
Yeah, 100%. You would not blow that surprise. He's too busy landing helicopters on ships and promoting Top Gun right now.
Yeah.
There you go. Now,
right.
So why is this such a thing to be excited about, Rowan?
Well, I will make this less of a review and more of a, what kind of movie is this? This is objectively, this is a very exciting entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think Doctor Strange is the perfect character to center this multiverse story around, to really, Spider-Man dipped its toe in there, but this is really opening the multiverse, bringing in Sam Raimi to give a very visually, distinct and very stylish flair on the whole thing. Sort of making a very, very unique Marvel movie, which I feel like is a sentence that's not said very often because a lot of these are just made by the machine. But Multiverse of Madness is definitely very, very different. Like it or hate it, it is something like previously unforeseen when it comes to Marvel movies, and that is why you should see this movie. I will abstain from my personal opinion on it, but
I'm very excited about, which what I've been hearing a lot of reactions to is like there's a decent amount of horror elements in this movie, and it's very dark, which I think is interesting because I thought that's why Scott Derrickson left.
Right.
But like maybe they will, like, because that's the thing. Scott Derrickson horror is very different than Sam Raimi horror. I feel like Sam Raimi horror is more accessible because there's also fun in it and like just weird, and like Black Phone looks terrifying and unnerving.
Yeah.
And you have a Sam Raimi horror movie with like Evil Dead, like swallow your soul, swallow this. So like there's a difference. And I wasn't the hugest fan of Doctor Strange, the first film. Like I enjoyed it. I didn't care about Rachel McAdams' character and like the whole love story or anything. And like Doctor Strange didn't grow on me right away. But then after Infinity War, I'm like, oh crap, I love Doctor Strange.
Right.
So like I was excited, like they used him in an interesting way in Spider-Man. I was so excited though to see him get his next movie. And this just seems so weird. And also the fact that this is pretty much a sequel to WandaVision in some ways as well.
A show that Sam Raimi did not finish, by the way, which I think is really funny.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited to see where her arc goes. And, you know, when Kevin Feige said that this has more surprises and shocks than Endgame, I'm like, what?
See, here's the thing. One thing that Endgame did extremely well that Doctor Strange has emulated is conveying none of its story through trailers, and yet the trailers still tell you exactly why you need to see this movie. It's different and it's interesting. Endgame was, you know, it's the big culmination. Before going in, we had ideas, we had theories, but we knew nothing concrete about the story. Same with Doctor Strange. The story got going, and I was like, so this is what it's about, right? This is how it all fits together.
Yeah, because like honestly, it's only been through like tiny things that I've heard Kevin Feige say recently about how some of these things fit together, and like timeline wise, or I guess less timeline wise and more events happening and dominoes falling, because time's a construct. Because when you're dealing with multiverses.
Exactly.
So I'm just super excited for this, and it didn't quite get above Thor Love and Thunder for me going into this year, because like I just love Thor so much after Taika Waititi took over, but like there's something exciting about this movie, and I'll be seeing it in T-minus 2.5 hours.
I love it.
Well, 3 hours. Got to sit through half an hour of trailers and Nicole Kidman telling me why I should go to AMC.
You get the Avatar 2 teaser as well right before it starts.
I did hear about that. I'll be like, oh my God, it's Avatar. God damn it, it's Nicole Kidman again. So,
actually, all of the theater stuff, at least in my theater, all of the theater stuff came before the Avatar teaser. So maybe the Avatar teaser is like is part of the like the file that they send the theater. It's part of that file.
Interesting.
So because it's not available online yet, so you know it's not really a widely available trailer.
They're smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
The box office projections I'm seeing is like this could be top 5 opening weekend ever.
This was the 8th. It was the 8th largest opening night of all time. So I would not be surprised if it gets up there with opening weekend.
So then, like, they definitely were doing the smart thing and putting the Avatar teaser with it.
For sure.
Disney knows what they're doing. So I'm not going to argue with them. They make a lot more money than I do. But yeah, so basically it's Doctor Strange weekend. So woo! But what we're going to be talking about at a feature length is a hour and 13-minute TV horror movie from Steven Spielberg. So generally I usually ask, why do you want to come on to an episode? And honestly, this is probably just because I didn't have anybody, and Rowan was definitely willing to hop on and help out. But was there any other motive for wanting to talk about something evil, Rowan?
Well, I in particular find a lot of directors early stuff very interesting. There's a YouTube channel called, I think I mentioned it on the Amblin episode, actually,
Yeah.
called Famous First Films, that I have scoured and just seen a lot of really interesting shorts made by directors who are now pretty big. Like, especially when it comes to directors who have made a lot of great things, like Spielberg, I think, might have one of the best, or largest hit ratio in when compared to misses,
Yeah.
for any director ever, and, most classics ever produced and all that. And so he especially, I think, is a very interesting case study when it comes to his earlier work. And, Amblin especially, I've made it quite public that I'm watching along with the show, so I'm rewatching what I have seen and watching what I've never seen of Spielberg's filmography. So I'm getting a just as much of a as a complete picture as Shane is getting here, and I just think it's very, very interesting. How seeing films that are not as perhaps not as good as the stuff he will make later on. Actually, no, scratch that. It's definitely not as good as the stuff that he will make later on.
Yeah.
But you can still see bits and pieces of him in there. While the movie might not be particularly his style, his presence can be felt, whether or not it's really one of his movies or these made for TV movies. It's really hard to know. Like, I feel like directors and writers are different for different for TV, very cheaply produced TV movies, like Hallmark movies. I have a feeling the writer and director don't really have much of a say, and it's more like, they tell them, here's the kind of movie we want, make it exactly to our specifications.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, who knows what it was like in the 70s, but Something Evil doesn't really feel like that. It feels slightly more distinctive. But yeah, I don't know. I guess just to put it more simply, I just love, I love watching movies, and really any chance I will get to watch a movie I've never heard of, I'll take. This show and another show that Shane and I have coming out, so hopefully some point in the near future, are great excuses to get some of those down.
Absolutely. And I think I didn't know much. I literally knew nothing about this movie before I started playing it on YouTube. Because I didn't even look it up, honestly, like details. And when I realized that this was like a haunted house movie, I'm like, Steven Spielberg did a haunted house movie. And so, like, for those who haven't watched Welcome to the Wasteland, we do spoil things. So, but I'm definitely going to be talking about the ending, but I will say that towards the end. But specifically, some of the things that stuck out to me about this is, one, you can feel Spielberg. There's definitely like a feeling and of themes and ideas in it. Because like, I know he didn't write this, but like you have like the distant father, like a mother and son relationship, which is definitely explored in different films, like that parental kind of relationship. And there's definitely like a hope, like a hopeful sentimentality about it, and especially how it wraps up, which we'll get to later. But like, what's also funny is like there's a couple of like what relatively well-known people in this movie, because like you have Darren McGavin, who is one, the dad from A Christmas Story, and also Billy Madison's dad, because that's obviously where I recognized him from first, as the father in this. And like he's like this busy working kind of dad, this businessman. And then you have like Ralph Bellamy from like Trading Places, and obviously like stuff way before that, but like I watched Trading Places as a kid. And like you have some pretty well-known like actors that pop up throughout this film. There's definitely some moments where it's just like you could tell it's inspired in terms of how they're like trying to deal with the tension and some of the scares. Some of the acting's iffy. There's definitely a couple of performances I'm like, I don't know about that. One particular scene that was super awkward to me was this big party scene in the middle of the movie, and there's just like this heavyset guy who's just yelling like everything. And then there's one really creepy character who keeps checking on his uncle, who is extra creepy, and just like the performance is weird and made me like it was a hard line between like, is he supposed to be this creepy, or like is this guy just like this is off-putting to me. But like it's a haunted house movie, and it plays out like a haunted house movie. And of course, like the husband's like, you're overreacting to this. And the wife's like, something's happening here. And then you have the old man who can tell all about all these different kinds of things. So like it definitely deals with a lot of tropes too. But like I've watched 3 Spielberg so far, and this is definitely my least favorite. Even Amblin, I really enjoyed that short film, and like there's nothing touching Duel at this point, because like Duel's like a revelation. Like how that even was a TV movie is ridiculous. But Rowan, what were some of the things that stuck out that you really appreciated about the film?
So I just like with Amblin, and I thought of this while I was watching Duel as well. It's very clear that there's a lot of talent behind the camera, and you know, like the building of tension is quite good. Some of the shots are framed really well. You know, the most common image of this that I see online is I think it's Sandy Dennis peering through the door with the door sort of her framed in between the door. It looks great. It's just you know, it's stuck within the confines of extremely low budget TV with a really uninspired script. You know, like the dialogue, I feel is pretty clumsy and awkward. The one thing that really stuck out to me, actually, is the Apple Bar song that is played multiple times throughout this movie. That, according to the Wikipedia page, is parodied often. I haven't been able to find any of those parodies, and I had never heard of it before this, but I just think it's funny that Wikipedia thinks that it's notable enough to make a whole category on the page devoted to it. I just thought, like, within the context of the film, it's pretty ridiculous. At first, it comes out of nowhere. I don't know if they were intending it to be funny, but then it becomes really unnerving, which I think is quite interesting. And I will attribute that to Mr. Spielberg. You know, placing it within a scene that it feels like it's punctuating the tension, and usually that really shouldn't work. You know, like if you have tension, you know, I feel like modern jump scares are another, you know, sort of side casualty of this. But, you know, when you're building tension, you don't want to jam something right in the middle of it that might ruin it. And you would think that this Apple Bar song would do exactly that. But in some scenes, it just feels genuinely just unnerving, and it makes me uncomfortable when I hear it later in the film. So that is what stood out the most to me. I know that's probably not what you were thinking I'd say, but yeah.
Hey, you know, that's the thing, because like I feel like a great director can get like the smallest of details and do something special with them. And like that's what's so great about like so many great films, where you could just take like one random tiny thing and it can mean so much. Like creepy little song makes things creepy, and all of a sudden it's just like, I don't like this at all. And it's interesting because like, especially with some of the scenes where like the haunting's happening, and like you can tell Spielberg's going all in on it, like crazy camera movements and all kinds of stuff. Like I'm thinking about like the scene with Ralph Bellamy, and like just that camera's going all over the place. And it's just like, I'm shocked that they could do that with a camera on this small of a budget, to be honest. And like it kind of reminded me of like what Sam Raimi did early on, because like they got really creative, including, from what I understand from, I don't know if this is true or not, but the Coen brothers literally running with a camera on a board because they were friends and they helped film that movie.
That's
Evil
incredible.
Dead. Because that's how they shot the deadite thing flying through the woods. It's literally a camera on a 2x4, and they're holding on each end and running through the woods. See, geniuses. This is how you make things work.
Exactly.
And like when you have no money, that's when you could get really creative. And you can see there's some creative aspects of this. But yeah, this definitely doesn't have, and I think you bring up a good point too, because what made Duel so great too is it had a really tight and intense script too, and knew what worked. And like that was Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend, like the actual novella, wrote that. And this we have Robert Klaus, who I don't know how much writing they did. They did, looks like they wrote Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, China O'Brien.
Huh.
Oh, they wrote Game of Death. I literally just watched that this past
really?
weekend.
Nice.
So basically a bunch of Bruce Lee stuff, which Game of Death, that was an interesting watch. But you could definitely tell like that this script's not the strong part of this. This like hits all the check boxes that you expect. And like I was sitting there, I'm like, I know exactly how this movie's gonna go. Except, and I guess this could be a good time to start with this. And like, it's not very inspired, but like I was just shocked how this movie ended, where like the mother's like, I love you, and then poof, possession gone. I'm like, what? That is like the most Spielberg thing about this movie, is that love conquered a possession.
Right. It sounded like they were sort of searching for something and went with the easy way out. And then every possession horror movie for decades afterward decided to go with the exact same thing.
It's just like, I've seen like, you know, spells and like cantations and all kinds of stuff to get rid of possessions. And this is just like, but I love you. I love you more than this demon and mom love. Poof. Yeah. I'm just like, something about that. I'm just like, now, yeah, this definitely feels like a Spielberg move. He's like, that's where that sentimentality is just like, bam, right there in your face. And, you know, this movie really did. Cause like, I was like, okay, this is a movie from the 70s on TV. The credits, I guarantee, were like 30 seconds at the end of this movie. And I'm like, there's like 2 minutes left in this movie. This thing's going to be wrapping up real quick. And it really did. Like, it felt like the end of a TV show episode. Like how like cleanly and quickly it wrapped up. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, that kind of just solidified my feelings that like, there's some promise here. But when it really comes down to it, this is just a silly haunted house movie with like Steven Spielberg isms throughout. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Rowan?
Well, you know, there was one scene where two of the characters were driving and something was happening to their car. Also, like nothing's explained. I feel like it doesn't really need to be, because that's not really what this movie is going for. It's just it's an extremely short. It's what, like 70 minutes ish.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you know, how many you know, weird occurrences can we put in here and then tie it up extremely quickly afterward. But anyway, I digress. There was a scene where two characters were in a car and something was happening, maybe to do with the supernatural presence, who knows, and the glass on the window on the front window of the car begins to sort of splinter, and it looks terrible. I think it's one of the worst effects I've ever seen. However, then the car blows up, and that could not have been done with visual effects back then. And so I gave it a pass, because they followed up extreme cheese and extreme camp with awesomeness. And we know Spielberg got a lot of experience with working with vehicles and blowing up stuff with Duel the previous year. So
he's probably like, how many explosives do we have left?
Exactly.
Shoot, let's blow up this car.
Yeah. And I do want to read something. I do want to read a review that I found interesting to end off my thoughts here, from Neil Sinyard, when it came out in 1972, wrote, Spielberg's direction is nothing short of magnificent. There are splendid montages as the mother paints and creates models and mobiles that will eventually be significant in resisting the evil spells. Rowan jumping in here. The opening credits I thought were quite good and very well shot, showing all of the ones that Sandy Dennis was making. Back to Mr. Sinyard. Dazzling dissolves and sinister camera placement for stealthy, apprehensive entrances into fearful places, and a Hitchcockian sense of the moment to throw away explanatory dialogue when it is less interesting than the mystery and menace. So this guy really liked this movie. Yeah. And I just, you know, I mean, if you ever needed another indication that art is super subjective, this is it. Like, this movie, I feel like you'd think would be completely objectively terribly made. Like, I can only imagine it was made with a micro budget, and there's not really much for anyone to work with here. And yet this guy still really, really enjoyed it. I personally did not have a great experience with this. I was happy that it was as short. And you know, of course, I'm happy to watch it for you, Shane. But just to like this is something that I would never ever watch on my own. I feel, you know, unless I was doing a specific Spielberg binge, I feel like that would be the only context in which I
Mhm.
would watch it. But
Which is why we are. So there you go.
exactly. But bravo for you, Neil Sinyard, for finding a lot of things to like about it and actually making some pretty decent points as well.
Well, I think those points make sense.
Oh yeah.
Like you could definitely tell, like, I feel like the direction of this movie is beyond this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's probably what happened with Spielberg was like, especially because I have one more Savage, which is a TV movie. And
Right.
then after that, it's just features throughout the rest of his career. Cause then it's like the Sugarland Express, which may be talking to you about, Rowan.
Mhm.
And then Jaws, which I'll definitely be talking to you about,
Hell
Rowan.
yeah.
Because Rowan will be joining on that episode. But like from there on, it's just like he just goes off
Hit
and
after hit. Yeah.
yeah, except for 1941.
Right.
That's the thing. I
That's
don't know.
that's still pretty early on in his
Yeah,
career.
which to be fair, never watched it before, but we'll be watching it for the first time for this, and it's part of my lovely Steven Spielberg collection that I bought. So there we go. But those are our thoughts on Something Evil. Now it's time for us to recommend some things we actually did enjoy. So because yes, I am keeping a running ranking so that I'm not doing this later, because then I did in hindsight, I went back and did my Coen Brothers rankings, Kubrick rankings, and Scorsese rankings. So I'm going to try to keep this going as I'm going through, but like this is the last out of the three so far. This was easy. Like Duel's like 100% number one so far.
Yeah.
But Rowan, what are your recommendations?
So I am going to start off with a trilogy of films that I watched recently as research for a project that I'm writing with a friend. We watched all three films in the Before Trilogy by Richard Linklater, Ethan Hawke, and Julie Delpy. And those are 1995's Before Sunrise, 2004's Before Sunset, and 2013's Before Midnight. When I say that this came so close to edging out The Lord of the Rings as my favorite movie trilogy, I do not say that lightly. I love these movies. I watched them earlier in the year, and watching them again just like a couple months later is like they were still so fresh and so refreshing, to use a similar term. These movies have some of the best character development and character writing that I've ever seen anywhere. And I think as the films went on and Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy became more involved in the actual writing process and character development than I expect they were on the first one, it just all makes a lot more sense. If you have these characters that you're spending an hour and a half with, it makes sense to have the actors have an input, especially after it worked so well a previous time. So for those of you unfamiliar with this franchise, it feels weird to call it that. But essentially, Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke are two students on a train going to Vienna in the mid 90s, and Ethan Hawke asks her to get off the train with him in Vienna, and she is at first a little hesitant, but she does it, and what follows is just a day of walking and talking around the city, an unforgettable day, and then an unforgettable night, and then 9 years later they meet each other again. So I watched this with two of my friends. We've been having some movie nights lately, and it was my second time watching it, but one of our friends, it was her first time, and seeing her reactions to everything happening. It's not a particularly like super dramatic, super tense series of films, but it does have lines that it has lines that make you think. It has lines that make you your jaw just drop, and it has lines that make you contemplate, like life and the future and all the scary things that you never want to think about on a day-to-day basis. So I will recommend the Before Trilogy. Extremely brilliant films. I will say, I don't really throw this word around often, but genius. I genuinely think that the Before Trilogy is just true genius, and should be looked at as some of the best films ever made. So yes.
Quick couple of thoughts. One, starring renowned Marvel actor Ethan Hawke.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because, that's 100% how Ethan Hawke wants to be remembered because of
Obviously,
Moonlight.
obviously.
Two, I saw the first two double feature for Valentine's Day in my
Ooh,
alternative films club in
nice.
college. So that was a really cool experience. My fiance hates Before Midnight. She
Ah,
hates Ethan Hawke
that's
in
my favorite
general.
one. That's my favorite one.
She hates him. Like she hates him so much that it ruined the movie for her.
Ah, that's a
And
shame.
she's so mad. Like, I won't give away what happens, but she hates how it wraps up.
Hmm.
Um, because like speaking of like not a whole lot of like really big tension, there's one particular sequence in Before Midnight that is so
Yes,
uncomfortable.
that is the big exception, I think.
Yeah, big exception. And then there's a wonderful Criterion trilogy set of this. And I bought it for my friend Matt. It's beautiful.
Nice.
So next time we're getting our 50% off sale. It's always a good one to keep an eye out.
You'll have
'cause I
to,
don't
yeah,
think-
you'll have to let me know when that happens, because I don't buy a lot of physical media, especially not now on a student budget. But that is
Fair.
something that I would put some money towards.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But what's your other recommendation?
So I have been slowly making my way through as many silent shorts from the 1800s and the 1900s as I can. I just think it's completely invaluable to my film education. And a lot of these are really, really interesting. And one of them that I watched this morning is the first ever adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. Might be one of the first film adaptations ever, as Shane is showing. So this was direct
cinema set,
Yeah.
which is highly recommend for cinephiles out there.
Yeah. There are still a couple on there that I have to check out. But so this was directed by Cecil M. Hapworth and Percy Stowe, however you want to pronounce it. It is a very, very condensed version of the story. By the way, free on YouTube. It's less than 10 minutes if you want to check it out.
Yep.
An extremely condensed version of the classic story, but still it gets as creative as it can with its visuals. Alice shrinking after she drinks the potion is done very interestingly. But my favorite part is when the Cheshire Cat comes up, and it's just a regular ass cat who is so done with everything and just kind of stares at her and then fades out, is one of the best things I have ever seen. It is so funny. It's definitely not intended to be that, but I just find it so hilarious that they just got a regular cat, stuck him in there. Yeah, so this is free on YouTube. Definitely check it out if you're even the least bit interested. It is not going to take up a lot of your time.
There you go. Absolutely. And I have that along with the original Frankenstein, Voyage to the Moon, Pool Sharks, which is a really fun comedy about two men playing pocket billiards to impress a woman. It's a ton of slapstick and stuff like that.
Love it.
And then there is a D.W. Griffith's The Mystery of the Leaping Fish, which is that's like 25 minutes. It's like a detective story. But most of the other ones are all under like 10 minutes. And it's a really cool thing to check out if you love film. Now, I'm going to run through these pretty quickly, but I have 3 recommendations because I did get to hit on all my categories, which is new film release. I'm recommending Bubble, the new anime on Netflix, which is about a world where bubbles fell from the sky and Tokyo is in a giant bubble dome and young people do parkour competitions with bubbles to like vie for supremacy. Awesome. And then also a young man falls in love with a mermaid. Because this is anime. The weirdest shit just thrown together. Romance wasn't the most inspiring thing to me, but like the whole world and the action in it were amazing. So like definitely would recommend. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original anime. On my watch list, I did not pick what we're going to be talking about for our other venture, but I watched Ginger Snaps for the first time, which is a werewolf story about 2 sisters. One of them is turning into a werewolf, and it's really darkly funny. And also towards the end gets really terrifying, to be perfectly honest. And it's from the creator of Orphan Black, and which I've never watched, but I heard a lot of people really enjoy that show. So I'd recommend that. And one of the films that I've watched, I almost went with Game of Death, but it's not a great movie. It has really cool action in it, but like Bruce Lee died halfway through filming it, and they hodgepodged that movie together. But the one I'm going to recommend is Sabotage, which is an early Hitchcock film. And it's some early Hitchcock. It's tense. It's interesting. I have an early years of Hitchcock collection that has like 16 films in it.
Ooh.
And that was one of them. I can thank my friend Jojo, who bought me that as a gift when she was my graduate assistant. It's a really cool thing. So those are some of my recommendations. But that's a wrap this week. Next week, I'm going to be doing Spielberg's last TV movie, Savage, and Mike Hilty from SiftPop's going to be joining me for that one. And a lot less interesting movie to talk about for coming attractions next week. There's no Marvel movie coming out next week. But Rowan, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm allowing you some time to shamelessly plug whatever you like to shamelessly plug.
Oh, wow. I will do a selection here. I have a website called The Lenient Critic. I'm currently having the best day I've ever had in terms of viewers on that website. You'd think that it would be because of Doctor Strange, but that review hasn't been getting a lot of views, and I still have almost 400 people who have visited today. Yeah, so that's thelenientcritic.com, LENIENT critic. I also have a companion podcast that I do every week. And I guess I can announce it here. Shane and I are like officially announced that Shane and I are doing a new show. I'm sure, we've been mentioning it a lot. It's called Rowan and the Wasteland. And who knows when it's going to start? Hopefully sometime, maybe next month, maybe June. Yeah, we've been steadily recording every week, so we have a lot of episodes built up.
Absolutely.
We are very, very excited to share it with you.
Yes, absolutely excited. We're waiting on a few tiny things to fall into place so we look professional.
Exactly.
And then it'll be coming your way. But thank you as always, Rowan, and thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.